Our scripture this morning is from Acts 2:42 through 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. May the Lord bless the reading and the hearing of his word.
I feel like I need a sign that says over here, because we're usually over here, but we have a lot of moving parts today. So I'm going to start with the story of stone soup. There was this village, and there was a great famine. And this village, they didn't have much to eat, let alone anything to put away for the winter. And the people were afraid. They were afraid for themselves and for their families. They were afraid they were going to go hungry, and they wouldn't have anything to put away for the winter. And so they hid any food that they had. One day, a wandering soldier came into the village, and he asked different people about a place to eat and a place to sleep. And they told him, there's not a place to get a bite of food to eat in this whole county. You better keep on moving. And the soldier said, I have everything I need. In fact, I would like to make some stone soup to share with all of you. And he pulled a big black pot from his wagon, and he filled it with water, and he built a fire under it. And then slowly he reached into his knapsack, and while villagers were watching, he pulled a plain gray stone from the cloth bag, and he dropped it in the water. Now, by now, people in the village are hearing of this magic stone, and they had come out and they were surrounding this soldier in his cooking pot. And as the soldier sniffed the soup and licked his lips, the villagers began to overcome their lack of trust. The soldier said to himself, I do like a tasty stone soup. Of course, stone soup with cabbage is even better. Soon a villager from his house in the village square ran out holding a cabbage, and he said, I have this cabbage from my garden. And he held it out for the soldier, and he cried out, fantastic. And the soldier cut up the cabbage and added it to the pot. You know, I once had stone soup with cabbage and a bit of beef, and it was delicious, said the butcher. I think I can go find some beef scraps. As he ran back to his shop, other villagers offered bits of vegetables from their own gardens, potatoes, onions, carrots, celery. And soon the big black pot was bubbling and steaming. And when the soup was ready, everyone in the village ate a bowl of soup, and it was delicious. The villagers offered the soldier money and other treasures for this magic stone, but he refused to sell it. He had many offers to sleep that night on cots and houses, and the next day he traveled on his way. So hold on to that story for just a moment. We're going to continue in our summer series, The Way We Love. And we've been talking about the great commandments, loving God with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and loving our neighbors as ourselves. In the past 3 weeks, we talked about what it means to love God with all of our heart, soul, and mind. And we did this through the practice of worship, pray, and learn. And then last Sunday, Pastor Dave, he pivoted into the second commandment, which is loving our neighbors as ourselves. And he talked about loving God with all of our strengths by giving ourselves in service to others, whether that's in small ways or big ways. It is because God takes whatever we offer and he multiplies it and uses it in ways that we couldn't even begin to think of. And so today, we're going to talk about loving our neighbors through the act of giving. And I recognize that giving and serving kind of overlap and they kind of coexist together. So as we continue today, I have other people who will come up to join me, and I'm hoping you'll understand what we talk about as we talk about giving. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story of stone soup that I shared. And I think the story of stone soup creates this beautiful picture of what it means to be in community together. But we also see that in our scripture today. And the scripture today is of the early church that formed. And in both the early church and in this village who made this stone soup, they learned to cooperate. They learned to trust each other. And they learned to build a stronger community. Right? We heard that in the early church, they devoted themselves to fellowship, to prayer, to the breaking of bread together. They began to recognize each other as brothers and sisters in the family of God. In the story that I shared, we see that the villagers were reluctant to share at first. They were afraid, right? They didn't know what was going to happen. What they did know is that their families might not have enough food for the winter. But slowly, as the traveler encourages them to contribute, he encourages them to give to each other. And what we see is that even limited resources, when they're combined, they create something beautiful, and they can give to the whole community. Throughout both of these stories, the theme is generosity. It's this willing sacrifice to give to the neighbor. And if we look at generosity from the Bible, we understand that it starts with knowing that everything we have is a gift from God. And it is a gift for God. And generosity is going above and beyond what is expected. It's this act of giving selflessly and sacrificially. In verses 44 to 45, it says, all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give anyone who had need. So does this verse mean that we leave today, we empty all of our pockets into one pot, and we distribute it evenly among us? No. And please do not send any emails to Pastor Dave saying, I said, go and sell all your possessions and give all of the proceeds to the church. That is not what I'm saying either. What this passage is talking about, it's talking about the social characteristic of God's kingdom. Meaning that in God's kingdom, everyone shares equally in the good gifts of God. Giving is a strong theme in the Bible. I mean, we all know the verse John 3:16 that says God so loved the world that he gave his only son. God gave the world to humanity and provides for them. In return, God calls for us to give to one another, to give generously. And so as the discipleship team has met over the last year, we've talked about these 6 words. And I think the word give is the one word where we spent probably the most time on, because we wanted to make sure people understand that giving means beyond just material gifts. And while we recognize that monetary donations are important, and they're important in this church and to do ministry and for any organization, we also recognize that the act of giving includes so much more. It should include acts of kindness and compassion. It should include offering support, attention, or encouragement. And so I've invited 2 of our discipleship team members, Jim Fleming and Emily Reese, to come up and to talk about this practice of giving and how it shapes our spiritual growth and how they define what giving means and what they hope all of us will come to know as we're growing as disciples. So let me get Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
This is Emily. This is Jim. So I think I'm going to start with Jim. So you don't want me to start with you?
I said hello.
Oh, I thought you said no. Okay. So Jim, we've talked about what it means to give and this experience. And so I just want you to take a minute and share how you have lived out this practice of giving.
Well, whenever someone starts in church talking about giving, my first thought is money, because of all the stewardship sermons I've sat through. But certainly that's an element. But now that I'm retired, my financial giving is pretty much taken care of in January. And that's when I get my required minimum distribution. And there's a thing, if you're not familiar with it, called a QCD, a Qualified Charitable Distribution. And it's a very good tax advantage. So my church giving is taken care of right away, my base giving, and so that's off my mind, but that doesn't leave me off the hook. There's a lot more giving to be had in my time and talents, such as they are. The easiest opportunity is serving as an usher on Sunday morning. I mean, what the heck? We're already here. And
You might as well do something, right?
might as well do something. And frankly, it is a wonderful opportunity to have a chance to chat with the members of my church family. And I don't normally see people on a day-to-day basis. The other thing to think about here is that being an usher is not a career choice. You can do this once or maybe twice, and that's it. You don't need to sign a commitment for it. And I know a lot of people are afraid of church positions because many of them do turn out to be career positions.
Yeah, we're not looking to add career positions, right? So what I hear you saying, Jim, is even if you serve one time in some capacity, that giving can make all the difference.
That's good. That's good. Now, if you take the next step, if I can put it that way, and join a committee, well, then you're talking about a 1 to 3 year commitment, depending on what committee it is. But you know, even that is not written in stone, because I have been known to resign from positions before. Usually to go on to a bigger one.
That's not an encouragement for any of our committee members to resign. No emails today of resigning. Jim, you're not helping me out here.
Just saying.
Okay.
Just saying. But I do have some talents that I can contribute, because I'm a detail-oriented person, and so reading and writing manuals are something I do. As I mentioned to the SPRC group last week, I have a high threshold for boredom. And the other way, the other way of serving is building relationships. Just building relationships among ourselves is a way of showing God's love and of serving His kingdom. And I would challenge you, as you listen later to the folks on the youth team who just came back from Pontiac, listen to what they say and see how they served and built relationships.
Yeah. So one of the things that as the discipleship team we talked about was you can give in multiple ways, and it doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And then relationships is vitally important when you think about this concept of giving. And it should be a holistic approach, right? So Emily, we want to share what you talked about in terms of giving and how we live this practice out.
Sure. I think about our membership vows, actually: prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness. We give all of these things. And so that's part of what I believe our commitment is, as well as our surrender to God. Fran's song earlier today just really nailed it, that we surrender all of it and we give it back. And the scripture comes to mind about a good measure pressed down. When you give, you get back, you receive. And so I think that's a big part of what we're thinking about here as well, as we look at these words that we've been talking about, and worship and serve and pray and give. And so we're really excited about play, because as you kind of gotten a feel from Jim today, we're all about the fun. And so the humor in life. And we don't have to just be stoic Christians who sit and do boring things all the time. We can have fun. We can play. We can give to one another, and in that we receive back.
I think that's the importance of learning what these neighborhood gatherings are, right? It's the bringing together all of these words, because in these neighborhood gatherings and in your own neighborhoods, whether Dave or I are there or not, you can do all of these things. You play together, you pray together, you're learning, you're worshiping, you serve, and you give together. And so it is all about relationship, and it's relationship with God, and it's relationship with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you guys have anything else you want to add?
I think
All
I'm good.
right. Well, thank you guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thanks.
Jim, So, and they alluded to this, and just that we had our youth and Zach on a mission trip this week, and Emily had made the statement that we are called to give, and we give out of this response to God. And are they coming up here? Okay. And so they're going to come up and they're going to share. And so I invite you just to listen to their stories about how this formation of relationship took place this week. You guys can come on down.
While they're getting settled, I'm going to give you a little bit of information. So, as it's kind of been said, we were on a mission trip this week to Pontiac, Michigan, which is a city northwest of Detroit. It is sort of like relative to Indianapolis, where Lebanon is to Detroit. And this town, especially the neighborhood we were serving in, is a town with a lot of poverty. So we were working with an organization called Micah 6, who is doing long-term community development in Pontiac. And what that means is that they're building relationships with the community, they're providing social needs for the community, but most of all, they're connecting people to the organization and to one another. And so part of our job while we were there, in fact, I'd say our main job, was building relationships, building connections. And so I'm going to ask each of these students just one question. I think the microphone probably needs to start here, but just one question, which is, tell me about one person you met in Pontiac this week.
Does it work? Yeah. Okay. My name is Hanley Kurth. I'm going to my sophomore year, and this is my second mission trip that I've been on. My first one was last year, and this mission trip, like Zach said, was focused on building relationships. And a strong connection that I remember was made on the first day, having dinner with the Micah 6 community. And I met this little boy. He was about 5 years old, and his name is Cristiano, I remember. And the first thing he asked me was what my name was, and I only had to tell this little boy once what my name was, and the rest of the week he called me by my name, and I appreciated that he remembered my name, and it was valuable to me that he valued my name and the importance of using my name. And then we were all playing, I think it was after dinner, and we were all playing the church kids and the Micah 6 kids. And Cristiano asked me if he could play with my hair because it was down that day. And I said, sure, bud, of course you can play with my hair. So we just sit down, and I give him a hair tie, and I just sit there, and my friends are watching him do my hair, and I don't know what it looks like. But he is pulling out pieces in the front, and it ends up being this side ponytail with a lot of wonky pieces out. And I let him do his thing, and then I was like, he was done, and he said, "I'm done." And I said, "How does it look, bud?" And he looks at me and he says, "You look so beautiful." And I remember that it was a silly moment because it was kind of a wonky hairstyle, but the rest of that week, it just, his comment made my week because he looked at me and he was like, "You look so beautiful." And it was just, he was so kind that no matter what his home life may be at home or what he's struggling with, this little boy had enough kindness to tell me that I looked very beautiful, and he knew my name and reached out to me every day, and that just meant a lot to me.
I'm Casey Layton, and I'm going to be a sophomore, and this was my first mission trip. And I'm going to talk about a girl whose name was Amila, and she was just so positive. And every night we would play with the kids in this like garden right across from the Micah 6 house. And we were like all playing, and I just remember like noticing her because she was just so like nice and positive. And like no matter what, this girl always had a smile on her face. And we ended up finding out later that her, along with like all her siblings and a bunch of other kids, they had just moved into a house in the neighborhood. And I knew that like wouldn't have been easy because like there was a lot of stuff going on for her at home. And so I just found it like really empowering to see that she was just like so positive. And I remember we were doing Bible study on Thursday night. And so all the kids, we all sat down, and the leader from Micah 6 is like giving out candy if you get the answers right. And I was sitting with her little brother Rex, who was like 2 or 3 years old. So like he obviously didn't know how to answer like the questions. And he raised his hand every time, and she like moved closer to us and she goes, "Rex, if I get the candy, you know, I'll give it to you." And I really thought that was like really special to see that like, I know that she would have wanted that candy for herself, but she just wanted like her brother to have it. And I think that's really gonna like stick with me, like how like really she was just like so nice, and she just like wanted to be such a good person like the whole time we were there.
My name is Julia Rux. I'm a sophomore, and this is also my first mission trip. And when we went to the lake days for one of like our fun days, me and Casey, we went right in the water, and this group of boys in the Micah 6 community, they just came up to us and just started playing. They didn't even introduce themselves. And we were all playing, and we were like, "Wait, what's your guys' name?" And one of the little boys' name was Blaze, and he just wanted to hang out with us the whole time. Because me and Casey are cheerleaders, of course we wanted to do some cheer stunts in the water, and Blaze just wanted to do that the whole time. He was like flipping and doing stunts and all that. While the other boys got bored and they wanted to go play football, he just stayed with us. And then one night after dinner, his mom came up to us and was talking, and she was like, "Blaze won't stop talking about you guys. He just really wants to hang out," and it was just really cool.
Hi, I'm Ainsley Redenberg. I'm going into 8th grade. This is my second mission trip. And on Tuesday, my group, we didn't really have a lot to do. We were sitting in our van just waiting to go to the lake. We were given a certain time. And the night before, my prayer partners had given me Play-Doh and stickers. And I brought that with me to give out to some of the kids. As we were waiting, I saw a mom and her daughter, who looked about 2 years old, walking by. And so I rolled down the window and asked them if they wanted any Play-Doh or stickers. So I walked out of the van and gave it to them. And then a few minutes later, we saw them walking out of the Micah 6 house, and this girl had stickers all over her face, was holding the Play-Doh, and was showing her mom everything. And it just made her day, and I felt really happy about it. And it just kind of shows that the smallest things make the biggest impacts.
Hi, my name is Jillian Medvesic, and I'm going to be a freshman at Ball State next year. This is my second mission trip, and on the second night, I met the sweetest little girl. Her name is Amelia, and on the second night, Zach and I walked over to the garden where there was like an open field, and all of the guys and all the little boys were playing football, and there was this one little girl that walked straight up to me and said, "Are you a gymnast?" And I said, "No, but I know how to do a cartwheel." So I spent a few minutes teaching her and Cristiano how to do a cartwheel, and immediately we had like a friendship right there. I was so happy that she came up to me because I was a little nervous to just kind of go sit over there and watch. But she took my name tag and decided that she was going to be Jillian for the rest of the week. She started introducing herself as Jillian and that she was 19. And I became Millie, which is her nickname, and I was 6 and I was going into 1st grade. And it was just a really special connection that we had. Even after I left the Micah 6 house, which is where we were, she did introduce herself to many of the other people that she was Jillian, and I was like, oh, okay. Throughout the week, we got closer and closer, and she told me that she wanted to be a cheerleader or a gymnast. She was very torn between the two. So Julia and Casey and I did some cheer dances with her, and it just like really brought something out in both of us. On the last day, it was really hard for both of us because I had made such a strong connection with her, and she didn't want me to leave. And I had told her the day before we left that I was going to have to go back to my home in Indiana, and she was like, but you're coming back tomorrow, right? And I said, no, I have to go back to my home. And that last night when we had to go do worship and she had to go back to her home, she just wouldn't let go of me. She was holding on to me, and she just kept crying and crying and crying. And I was like, I'm sorry, I have to go. And she was like, no, you can't go. And our lanyards that we wore each day, they had a front and a back side. So I took out one of my name tags and I gave it to her because she kept taking it throughout the week. And everyone was like, does it have your number on it? And I was like, no, but it's got my name on it. So I gave that to her, and it was just really sweet that every time we came to the Micah 6 house, she was like, where's Jillian? And we just grew super close that week.
Thank you, guys. So Micah 6 moved into this neighborhood 5 years ago, and one of the things Coleman, their executive director, told us as part of our learning on the trip was that when they got there, no one knew each other. Turnover in the neighborhood was less than a year, so people would move in and move out really quickly, which led to really high crime rates, which led to a lack of community in general. So when they got there, their goal was simply to build connections and make community. And when groups like ours come in and build community and make a safe place for the kids in the neighborhood to come and feel welcome and feel loved, it builds that community stronger. It lowers the crime rate. It increases the amount of time people want to stay and live in that neighborhood, and it is truly a transformational thing. So these kids did a lot of really, really amazing work this week.
So let's wrap all this up. From the story of Stone Soup to the story of the early church to how Jim and Emily have reached out and given in their spiritual life, and how our youth spent this week giving, right? I think what we want you to hear is that giving happens when you're in relationship with each other, when you're coming together as a family. And sometimes that involves sharing a meal. Sometimes it's in Bible study. Sometimes it's in praying together. Sometimes it's just meeting the needs of someone. Sometimes it's playing together. But it's all done with this heart of generosity. And this heart of generosity should be motivated by God's grace. And God's grace is a grace that does not hold privilege for anyone, but instead it extends liberating love to everyone. Let me say that again. God's grace. It's a grace that does not hold privilege for anyone, but instead it extends liberating love to everyone. So I think the discipleship team and I would like to challenge you to be thinking about how God might be inviting you to form relationships. How's God inviting you to love your neighbor? Maybe it's encouragement. Maybe it's serving as a mentor. Maybe it's having conversation. Maybe it's learning about someone. Whatever it might be, I encourage you to do it with a spirit of joy, because what we know is that as joy developed in the hearts of the early church, that is when praise for God flowed from their hearts. So I invite you to stand now as we close our service today.